Either my computer's acting up or your computer's acting up, Mark, because I can't hear you.
Hello. Can you hear? You can hear me.
I can hear you fine. It's just Mark as his computer's like
Yeah, he's frozen.
he's frozen. Well, remove him from the world.
All right. Should we get started with the craziest, stupidest story?
Yeah, you said something about Comey. Now, wasn't he the guy that threw the election to President Trump the first time
Yes.
because
All right. So,
he
but
said something bad about Hillary that just wasn't true? Is that Comey?
So he's hated, but Comey is hated, former director of the FBI, is hated by both sides. The libs hate him because he threw the election to Trump by announcing that Hillary was under a second or a resumed
or an investigation.
Right. But he failed to also note that Trump was also under FBI investigation for ties to Russia. If he'd just done that, he could have evened the playing field. And then conservatives or MAGAs hate him because, he investigated Trump for ties to Russia, which even if Trump didn't have those ties, and you can argue that he did, his family had dozens and maybe more than 100 contacts with Russian agents in the. So, but anyway, he walked into this punch. He's a numbnuts because yesterday he tweeted 8647. And 47 is the 47th president. And if you've ever worked in a bar or a restaurant, you know that 86 means in a bar, kick out a rowdy customer. You've been 86, being an asshole.
I didn't know that because I never go to bars except to eat. So I didn't know there was 86.
Also, if a restaurant runs out of something, they tell the wait staff 86 the salmon. We don't have any more salmon. So if somebody tries to order the salmon, say, well, we're out of it. So Comey tweets this, and the MAGAs decide to go like crazy. Ann Coulter, Laura Ingraham.
All of our favorites. I've seen them before. Coulter,
they're saying that Comey was suggesting that Trump be assassinated because 86 was the murder. Because if you go down the list of possible meanings of the term 86, at some point you get to where it says one of the definitions is to take somebody out murder-wise.
Okay, all right.
But this is not, the most easily the most familiar use of the term 86. And certainly the former director of the FBI wouldn't suggest that Trump be assassinated. But he wandered into the punch. Why is he tweeting this shit at all? Where he should know the various possible meanings of 86 and not set himself up for this kind of bullshit outrage. Where, you may not know the term 86.
I don't know what it is. 86. That's the first I've ever heard of it. 8647 to me would be a revenue ruling.
Do you think MAGAs have ever been kicked out of a bar? Do you think
MAGAs live in bars? So who knows?
Have they ever worked at a fucking Waffle House? Yeah, they know what the term freaking means. So I would make the argument. I wish Jatovy were here to evaluate my argument. Comey reminds me of Tiger Woods, and I'll explain. They're both numbnuts. So when Tiger's been famous since the age of 2 or so, when he first went on TV to show off his golf skills. He's been a star his whole life.
He's good, yeah.
All right, so when he decided to start cheating on his wife, he did it in the laziest way possible. He'd go to clubs, he'd have his own private table, and his sycophants would bring randos up to him for him to bang. He'd be like, let's go. He had no game. He had no strategy, no subtlety. He just did. He had no style. Everything had always come to him. And so with his cheating was like he got caught easily by his wife, who felt humiliated. And
rightfully so.
And beat him in the head with a golf club. He hasn't been the same since. if he'd maybe gone to her and said, look, I'm sorry, I'm having trouble with monogamy, work with me on this. Now, pretty blonde ladies can sometimes be freaks. She might have been up for some eyes wide shut kind of stuff, but no, he cheated in a lazy way because he never had to develop strategic skills. And ditto for Comey. Comey is 6'8".
Yeah, I did see him next to other senators and congressmen. The guy towers over him.
He's giant dude.
Legitimate 6'8", because a lot of these people, they lie about their height.
No, he's a giant dude. And head of the FBI, which means whatever he said, people listen to him because he's looming over you and he's your boss. He never learned to think strategically. He was being played by the pro-Trump factions in the FBI, also the anti-Trump factions. He didn't address any of them strategically. He got played by Giuliani and the pro-Trump factions. If he thought, and he's still doing lazy stuff like tweeting, why tweet 8647? It's so.
Well, you see, Rick, the tallest guy in the room doesn't necessarily have to be the brightest light bulb in the room.
That's right. That's like everybody, we grew up in the era of dumb jocks.
Yeah.
Where it's not really that way anymore.
Yeah, but you know what gets me about Comey more than anything? Okay, talk about election interference. A couple weeks before the election to announce one of the presidential candidates is under legal investigation. That has got to be one of the lowest things I ever saw in my life.
11 days.
Right, exactly.
And while the other candidate is also under FBI investigation, which he neglects to mention.
Right. Well, that's what I'm saying. To me, this guy has no credibility at all because of that. In other words, the thing is, first of all, if you're going to do that, because that's basically election interference. And what got me about is that the Democrats did not really yell and scream about this because remember, he said, oh, no, she's not. In other words, yes, she is. No, she is. It's to have a high-ranking official declare that you're under investigation 11 days before the election. There can't be any worse election interference.
No. And the pro-Trump faction in the New York FBI office put him in a box. They slow walked the Hillary investigation. Until it was, and then Comey knew that if he didn't announce it, the New York FBI via Giuliani was going to leak it. But
he didn't let him leak it. But the thing is, what he should have done is said what a lot of people do: no comment. In other words, he needed to keep his rear and the FBI out of that fight. This was going down in 11 days. And I have to tell my office in Salt Lake all the time, your best thing to do is to do nothing. Say nothing. Okay, seriously. And so the thing is, since my job is basically to keep the company away from all the bandits that are out there, but one of your best legal strategies is to, I know nothing, you say nothing, you do nothing. And so when he blurted this out, I was going like, is this guy serious? He said it's almost like saying right before the election, you can imagine the Supreme Court justice goes, I believe we found this person's murder weapon or something like that.
Crazy.
11 days before the election. Let's say Justice Roberts came up. We have credible evidence that this person is dealing drugs. Any high-level official does that because remember, people vote. This was a close election. As a matter of fact, to remind the MAGA people, nobody won the election in terms of popular vote. That's how close it was.
So they analysts say that it cost Hillary about 2%, which was the margin of electoral college victory. Now, Obama also got played in this. Obama is a little bit of a numbnuts too because he got played by McConnell. Obama was going to announce that Trump was under FBI investigation and wanted McConnell to go along with it. And McConnell said, nope, if you say that, I'm going to announce it's a partisan strategy. So Obama backed off, thinking everything was going to be okay. No, Obama should have just barreled right ahead and said it. Oh, look, I'm echoing.
Whoa. Let me tell you, I think that's Mark. Okay. Well, thing is, I did see, what was that, World Politics last night? You had my friend, you didn't see it, Rick, you weren't there, but
No, neither one of y'all were here, but your friend John was there, and he was just
yeah,
thinking you were a Trump. He was thinking you were a Trumpster.
how do you like that liberal CNN person, communist network news person to show up on your show, Mark? To make
Well,
you
he
look
thought
like
that
a
you were a
boring
Trumpster. Me and Simon
conservative,
had the
Mark. John
interesting
makes you look
conversation
like
with
a conservative.
Yeah, he
What?
thought you were a conservative Trumpster. And
Oh, I
let's see
know.
what-
Well, let's
You
hear
know,
from Sasha. What does Sasha think of our American nonsense?
Which one?
escaped.
Which one you?
Where James
which one?
Comey,
There's more than one.
They were
former
talking
director of the
about, Comey.
FBI, said in a tweet yesterday, said we should 86 Trump. And everybody's running around like saying, oh, well, that means we should assassinate him. No, it means we should kick him out like he's a rowdy customer in a bar.
Wait, Sasha, do you know what 86 even means?
No, I'm not.
Okay, good. So there's two of us on the panel that don't know 86. So you're going to explain, Rick, to the rest of the non-mega audience what 86 means.
86, the most common understanding is if you're bouncing a bar, if you work in a bar, if you go to a bar and you screw up, you hit on women, you're too drunk to stand, the bouncers say you're 86th, and then they escort you to the door and you're out and you can't come back. Now, depending on how big a dick you are, it might be for the night or it might be forever. It might be for a couple of weeks till we forget what you did in the first place. 86
Rick,
somebody
you
out
put
of
it
the
in the
bar.
bar context. You put it into the bar context, but isn't it also a term that means fired? Because if I've heard 86 as a term, if somebody has been fired, they got 86. I know that some of my
Sure,
coworkers
they've been kicked out.
86.
All right. Also, it means items have been kicked off the menu in a restaurant. If you run out of the salmon, if you run out of the chicken fingers, you say from the kitchen, you yell at your wait staff, chicken fingers, 86. And they know if somebody tries to order the chicken fingers, the waiter has to say, sorry, we're out of those. There's also, I've heard, I don't have a military background, but if your Jeep suffers mechanical failure, if it's totaled, the Jeep is 86th.
Yeah, it can mean that as well, and everything.
If you look at the article on the term 86 on Wikipedia, after you go through all these definitions, you get about 2/3 of the way down the page, and they say 86 can also be used as a term for to kill somebody. 86 them.
Yeah, assassination. The mafia sometimes use that.
Well, there's different definitions to a word. Okay,
yeah, it's one of those words that's got mixed meaning. Hey, Nick, I was having those computer problems, and we might get to some news items as well, because I do have one of those news items that I want to ask Sasha about. But before we get to that, and since we've got Sasha here, and since me and Sasha were on there talking to your friend John and all along those lines, and I don't have his email, so he couldn't be invited this time around. But me and Sasha learned on it yesterday that you, according to John, are a MAGA and a Trumpster. Isn't that what John told us, Sasha? Or at least that's what he thinks Nick is and everything like that. So according to him, he thinks that you are a Trumpster and a MAGA.
I play one on TV.
Yeah, probably he said that, but I wouldn't pay much attention to that, because it's, it has to be proven, and it's.
Oh, I have to go to court on this one. That's a good one.
It's his opinion.
I'm an innocent man.
Okay, so it's his opinion. So now we know his opinion, but it just it doesn't mean anything at all.
Well, things
Mark, next time you see John, tell him I'm not, but I play one on TV.
Yeah, I'll tell him that. And that's what I told him. What I told him is I thought that some of your comments are said tongue in cheek, and I even said that while Jacoby was on the air, because I do know that sometimes you are saying things to bait certain members of the audience.
Oh, you think? That's the whole name of the game. See, here's the thing. Okay, you guys chased off all the right wingers, so there's the Dan Worthingtons don't show up anymore, and so I thought said to myself, we need another right winger here. looked around, there weren't any. So I said, I can play one. So I'm playing one on TV. It's pretty cool.
You're playing one
Yeah,
on
it's
TV.
pretty easy because all you have to do is repeat the garbage that you see on the air. It's not.
Yeah, that's all you got to do. The talking points, as Jacoby likes to call
Okay.
it. Speaking of talking points, hold on. Speaking of talking
yeah.
points, I want to get to one of the most important news stories today. Like I said, I do apologize for not being able to do the usual news briefing all along those lines. But apparently, we had the world's quickest peace talks because they ended after less than 2 hours in Turkey. And the Secretary of State Rubio has remarked to the press and everything like that. There was talk about, I think, some prisoner exchanges and some other things that they've been talking about. But Sasha, you are the expert on this. I know you'll be talking about it later on in about an hour and everything. But this had to have been one of the most quickest talks in history because apparently they met for the first direct talk since 2022 and it lasted less than 2 hours. So less than
Was it successful? Did they get everything done?
Well, the way I read all this, that was a rearranged deal between Putin and Trump to have Putin to defy the ultimatum to end the or start ceasefire rather on May 12th. So instead of Putin saying, no, I disobey that, which would clearly show that he is a party who does not agree to a peace talk or a ceasefire or both, he offered his view how to end it all by having started to talk on the May 15th. So that would imply that he would show up there, and Trump was prepared to show up there to meet with Putin, and everybody was there. What happened instead? Putin failed to show up. He sent a second or third grade level delegation to Istanbul, and therefore there was very little to talk. Then Trump came with the notion that there will not be a peace until he will meet Putin. Okay. If you think so, let him meet Putin. Ask Trump, please, Donald Trump, go and meet Putin ASAP. Just fucking do it. We'll see.
We'll see how that goes and everything. Hey, Rick, I got a story for you as well, and it's a international story. I know that Sharif, when he's here, loves us to talk about other parts of the world, but this is actually somewhat tied to Trump because Trump was in the same business and everything along those lines. But in Thailand, and I know that Sharif isn't that far from Thailand, a rich construction person, a construction tycoon, was among 17 wanted, and he turned himself in for negligence because apparently, as you remember, there was that whole collapse of that Bangkok skyscraper. So I guess he's admitting that he had some issues with his buildings. And I know that even in California, there have been issues with the buildings that have come collapsing. And we know there have been some issues with some of Trump's buildings as well. So are we going to see more construction tycoons getting arrested because they don't know how to keep track of their buildings and everything like that? Because apparently this guy in Bangkok
depends on how many earthquakes we have. Nothing, is a trial by fire like earthquakes. California actually does pretty well. Even the 1994 earthquake, which was like it was like a 6.8. I don't know. It was pretty big. Only 40 people died compared to a similar earthquake in like Mexico City or any city around the world. Hundreds, maybe thousands of people would have died. We did pretty well because we have a building code book that's about yay thick, and maybe a third of it is designing around earthquakes. So, it depends on California is overdue for an 8.0. Historically, we get one. If you look through the fossil record, about every 30 years, and I think it's been closer to 60. So we're going to get one, and we'll see if our precautions save lives. I mean, they will, but we'll see.
We'll see how it goes in California, just like in North Carolina, New York. and other places. But Dr. Sharif, you're here, and you oftentimes say that we don't cover enough of the rest of the world. So what are they saying about this construction tycoon that turned himself in, that apparently is at fault for that Bangkok building falling in and all along those lines? So what are they saying about that? Because apparently he's one of 17 people, and he's the person that was the rich person that ran that company that turned himself in. So what's the word in Bangkok and Bangladesh about this gentleman turning himself in?
Actually, this earthquake issue is a big issue even for Bangladesh, for Myanmar, for Pakistan, India, all of the countries, because we are in trouble. According to the Building Code of Conduct, I do not think Dhaka is well planned and it has a good infrastructures. We have lot of infrastructure, but in terms of earthquake and all of the things, I have also experience to work with one of the construction company in USA, especially in Silicon Valley, and I find that they have a very good innovation and technology in their hands. Especially they know how to manage it, and it's really helpful for Bangladesh. So I'm also discussing with few private corporations. Maybe we can deploy this kind of technology in Bangladesh. As a long time I live in Malaysia and this Asia Pacific region, I know, honestly speaking, the Building Code of Conduct, public awareness, emergency planning, and infrastructure assessment. These are the major things that we need to improve for this earthquake and all of the things. On the other hand, in Silicon Valley, the Swinson family, what I'm discussing right now, Swinson families and Swinson infrastructure has a very good technology in their hands. Uh, right now, I'm also working with Ron Swinson. He is very, very good scientist, and they have this kind of thing. So I think beside this Trump trade in the Middle East and all of the things, I think we need to open more door for this kind of innovation with North America. We need this kind of technology. We have to save our country. We have to save our place. If, let's say, if the 7 or 8 meter scales earthquake happen in Dhaka, I'm sure like at least 1 million people will die because of this earthquake. Only God can save us. So in that situations, what we see in Bangkok, uh, they have very good infrastructure, undoubtedly they have, but so managing this earthquake and all of the things, definitely we need to improve a lot. And I believe we have high opportunity to doing research and innovations partnership with USA for these particular issues.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Hey, Nick, I hope you're still there listening and all along those lines, because I've got a story for you and Kim. I wish Kim was here because I know Kim is a big fan, and I know Rick will have some thoughts around this as well of TikTok. But, there was a major story involving Mexico and TikTok because there was a major Mexican influencer. Yes, there are influencers all over the world and everything who was shot dead live on her live stream and everything like that. So it was, and she had voiced fear before the murder. So definitely there was
The Mexican cops are saying it was a hit. It was like a gangland execution style kind of deal. So did some incel decide to take her out because she's pretty and wouldn't have anything to do with him, or we don't know yet. Mexico, I don't know what their murder clearance rate is, but it doesn't seem great.
It doesn't seem great, but they are investigating this TikTok murder of this Mexican beauty influencer, according to their president, who is a lady as well. So they do have a lady president there, and she is investigating what's going on in that space. I remember that there was a time, and Rick, you remember it as well, when quote unquote snuff films were very popular, and I never understood that. Why people
that was an urban legend.
Okay.
I'm not sure there was ever a real snuff film where somebody gets killed on camera for real. I'm not sure any of those ever actually existed. You heard about it.
But hold a minute, wasn't there actual beheadings on TV? That I'm sure of.
Okay, but that wasn't. Yeah, the freaking Al Qaeda would cut off, but they weren't making snuff films. They were making a terrorist video. A snuff film is where bad guys, evil guys, take somebody who thinks they're going to be in a movie, and then the movie goes bad and the bad guys actually torture somebody to death on camera for the purpose of making perverted entertainment.
That makes sense. And
Yeah, I
maybe it's
don't
just
know
an
that
urban.
any of those that ever actually exist.
Maybe it's just an urban legend. Speaking of things that aren't a legend, and it involves a celebrity, and I was reading on my social media earlier today some of the testimony, including from his ex-wife and somebody that said that they were a sex slave for this particular individual. What is your take? And have you been following the P. Diddy trial? Because this trial seems to be very salacious, to say the least, and everything. Because there's all kinds of accusations about what was going on or wasn't
So I
going on.
haven't been following it, but my wife has, and she says every time she sees Diddy mentioned, she says he should be tortured to death. I've seen that she finds what he did super despicable. I've seen the clip of him kicking the crap out of one of his girlfriends, and I've seen a little bit about the freak offs where his girlfriend was compelled to have sex with a series of male prostitutes hired by Diddy. Yeah, I mean, he seems super creepy, but I don't know all the details.
Yeah.
But they're bad enough that my wife says that he should be locked up forever.
Locked up forever. We'll see how that trial goes and everything like that. Hey, Nick, once again to you. The other thing that's in the Supreme Court right now is this whole notion of birthright citizenship. Are we going to have some changes in birthright citizenship? Because apparently they're divided over this notion of whether we should have some tighter roles on or rules on birthright citizenship. You're the lawyer of this Pod TV family, so what's the word on birthright citizenship?
Yeah, well, the word is dealing with the words that come after born or naturalized in the United States. It goes under the jurisdiction thereof. And so the real question is, how do you interpret that under the jurisdiction thereof? So, yeah, we may see some difference in birthright citizenship under this court. But who knows? You know, it really depends on, are they going to reinterpret the Constitution differently than it's been interpreted for years? I don't know.
Yeah, we'll find out. And by the way, Jacoby's here, and Jacoby was on that
Oh,
call
good. I got somebody
with your friend John and everything. By the way, Jacoby, Nick is saying, as I said yesterday, that whole conservative stuff is him just playing one on TV. He's saying
no. I'm so deeply conservative. I am right of John Birch. As a matter of fact, to me, John Birch is a communist. You know. So anyway, that's just the way it is. Go MAGA.
A minute ago, you were saying you were playing one on TV. Now you're saying go MAGA. I think you're.
Well, that's because Toby's here. You can't. You don't want to. You can't give Toby any hope whatsoever.
I mean, there are parts that Nick does where Nick, jumps in his conservative bag. But yeah, no, Nick is, plays a lot on TV. But I heard the birthright citizenship thing. There's no. It's a ridiculous argument that they're making. I mean, how are you supposed to legitimize it? Well, I heard that they were trying to make it where, okay, for example, one state, you get particular laws, and then you have to go to each state or each region or each area to put up a class action lawsuit to make it go across the whole state. That's just not legitimately possible. It's just, I don't know, it's crazy. It just doesn't
sound crazy. And speaking of things that sounds crazy, and I know, Nick, since you're Mr. Conservative, you're going to love this one and everything like that. As long as I've been living in that 60 plus years and now and everything, there has always been, as far back as I can remember, commercials about the homeless situation and hunger in the world. And apparently children are dying left and right as the USAID is cutting and snapping the snap line, or the lifeline, for the world's most malnutritious. And apparently Trump and Musk, according to some, are smiling about this, and even though we've got kids starving all over the world. So what is our thoughts about the fact that millions is being cut away from the world to help the starving that are out there? And this was one of the major cuts that Trump put into place, and it's leaving countries unable to fight back against famine. And famine is one of those big issues in the world, and it's been an issue in the world for decades. So what's our thoughts around
somebody tweeted yesterday that the number of people who will die in the next 5 years because Trump is cutting off foreign aid is 5 times the number of Jews who were murdered by Hitler in the Holocaust. So if you do the math, somebody is estimating that 30 million people will die because we're cutting off foreign aid. I don't know if that's anywhere near accurate, but we have the money. It's good for us as a country. We want to be friends with the rest of the world. It doesn't cost very much. And yeah, so yeah, it's stupid for Trump and Doge to pull us back from the rest of the world. It lets China step in. It lets all the BRICS countries, the countries who are aligned against us, step in and befriend the world. And it's stupid. It's a strategy that makes you wonder if the current administration is really on the side of America.
Well, speaking of being on the side of America, and I don't know if anybody got any thoughts about this, but apparently there is also issues here in the U.S. and they are trying to come up with compromises. So Trump's big bill is facing his next hurdle in Congress as the GOP conservatives are warning that they may take some drastic action as well, and they're floating the House Republicans a compromise to placate the warring factions, including faster Medicaid cuts and larger SALT deductions. So what are our thoughts around this? Because apparently they're trying to find a way to make people happy in order to get the bill passed and everything. And one of those is some faster Medicaid cuts, even though at one time they said Medicaid was going to be safe for a while.
They want to raise the debt ceiling by $4 billion. And most of this $4 trillion, most of this $4 trillion will be to pay for another tax cut for the very rich, which is just horseshit. The very rich have the lowest tax rates they've had since before World War II. In the 1960s, the marginal tax rate for any money you made more than $1 million in a year was 91%. Now we're down to 37%. If you earn $200 million in a year and you don't have tax shelters set up, which is dumb because anybody who's earning $200 million has tax avoidance strategies, so they don't come close to paying 37%. But that's the highest tax bracket right now. If you had a terrible account, you might end up paying 37% on your $200 million in earnings, which is the lowest it's been in 70 years.
Wow.
Yeah,
Hey,
great.
go ahead, Nick. What were you going to say?
Yeah, actually, one interesting aspect Rick bring regarding this US aid, they stop funding to different countries. I appreciate his comment. But one thing, how I see Trump, he look like very strong leader. I know a lot of people's around USA, even in panel, they do not like it. But one thing I believe that if, as a global leader, USA or he can do, let's say the emerging economy like Bangladesh or India or Pakistan or Africa, whatever it is, if they can helps to solve our corruption related problem, I do not think we need money for the donor agencies or whatever it is. With our own economy, with our own finance, we can solve healthcare problem, we can solve housing problem, we can solve education problem, and many more things. And we can invite many innovations from Silicon Valley, from USA, or from Japan, and they can help us to grow our economy. But I believe that if we need to improve one area around the world, I do not know those is successful or not. But how we can manage the corruption? What will be the mechanism? I do not know if Nick has any thoughts on that particular issue because he is lawyer. Or is there any global organization who is working on these things? Because solving these corruption issues is one of the major problem of emerging economy. Maybe USA can. I think we have our friends. Sasha want to say something.
Yeah, Sasha.
Yes, if you allow me, I'd like to mention that we are living now in a new world, that there will be no help from anybody to anybody. Each nation has to fend for itself and find resources, reorganize, and do something to help itself. There is no more US aid. And the reason is not really Donald Trump. In fact, Donald Trump is doing tremendous job. I'm impressed with what he's doing internationally because a country which owes $37 trillion, nine of which have to be refinanced this year only, their military is in the worst shape in the whole history of United States. For example, I don't know if you are aware of it, but President Trump reportedly decided to end his short-lived war on the Houthis after being informed that the U.S. had burned through weapons and munitions at a rate of about $1 billion in the first month alone, and couldn't even establish air superiority. You're talking about Putin, what you're talking about. I wouldn't even mention some countries like starting with China and going all the list down the paper. So US is absolutely bankrupt country financially, military point of view, and Trump is doing fantastic job because if he wouldn't do it, if he wouldn't run around looking for money and prestige for the United States to establish something and do that, everybody would be sneeze and laugh at United States by now for sure. But it's not happening because of Donald Trump. He's doing a terrific job. My US friends, please don't kill him. Let him serve his term, and he's doing great things for the United States.
I want to go back to birthright citizenship for a sec. So,
Go ahead.
one thing that the Supreme Court should take into account is whether this is a law that has been in place in the form of the 14th Amendment for 157 years. But you have to take a look at how it works now. And is it destroying America? Are all these birthright babies made by illegal aliens flooding America and tearing apart our social fabric and our economy? And the answer is frick no. That the US growth rate, population growth rate, is the lowest in all of our history, running at about 0.5% a year. The only thing that stops our population from declining is immigration and the few babies that Americans or people in America are having. Now, Elon Musk and Trump himself are saying the U.S. needs to make more babies. Now, they like what they're really saying is more white babies. But taking the white thing aside, we're not even making enough babies to replace the population we have. So birthright citizenship is causing no negative effects at all.
Yeah, no negative effects on that sense and everything like that. I was going to get to another issue that's out there as well, because one of the things that the MAGA wing of the Republican Party and other wings like to talk about during campaigns is law and order. And law and order has been very much out there. I think I sent a clip either to Nick or to Jacoby. I think it was Jacoby. But it was basically this notion that when folks are killed by the police, oftentimes they criminalize the family. So they look at the family's history, even though that's not the person that was killed by the police. And they use the example of Tamir Rice and everything like that. Whereas then when there are serial killers that are white serial killers, they talk about how they didn't expect that from that person and that there was an unexpected situation. So they were making that contrast and all along those lines. And in Maryland, and this is one of those news stories I was getting ready to get to, they had an audit and they found that 36 people in custody, and I'm wondering what it would be like in other places, including those in the Deep South, that should have been ruled homicide. That's what the audit found. So 36 deaths in police custody should have been called homicides versus what they were called and everything like that. So what is our take on the job that the police are doing in our nation? And this is for anybody that wants to take that question. So are they doing a good job of maintaining law and order and also weeding out the thin blue line when it's being wrong?
So, Neil, I mean, the cops have a number of there's what do you call it? Qualified immunity.
Right.
This is like cops have strong employee unions.
Yes.
A cop gets all shooty, or maybe strangles a guy, or shoots somebody's dog. The union will step in and say that this is well within the bounds of normal police procedure, that the police officer feared for his or her life, that it's very tough to get a cop prosecuted for acts committed on the job. And then so that's thing one. Thing two is after 9/11, billions of bucks, tens of billions of bucks became available for police departments across America to militarize their departments because we were afraid of terrorism. And so a bunch of little police departments went from frickin' like Mayberry with Sheriff Barney Fife to Mayberry, but Barney Fife has a tank and a ton of AK-47s. The situation in LA is we don't have enough cops. We have 1/4 the number of cops per capita that New York City does. That means that the LA cops feel like they're under siege. They're paramilitary. This tends to make some of them a little bit more shooty than you would like. So it's a huge problem.
Speaking of huge problems, and this is coming back to one of Nick's favorite topics, which is the rights of people in other groups, whether it's transgender or LGBT and everything like that. And yes, I did go to a Jesuit university, but the Pope apparently earlier today has affirmed that the family is based on a union between a man and a woman, and that the unborn have inherent dignity, which is kind of his way of, I guess, going against abortion and all along those lines. So what is our take on this? Is this him leaning more conservative than he would be leaning liberal, which is the way that Francis, I think, was going? But he is saying that the union out there is based between a man and a woman, and none of this talk about same sex and the rest of that stuff.
Well, it's a little disappointing, but it's early days. And he's been Pope for, he hasn't even been, I think, officially made Pope yet. This is like pregame. So we can hope, it's been 2 weeks. We can hope that in the fullness of that he's just trying to maybe shore up his support among the traditionalists in the fullness of time. He'll, show some enlightened for a Pope attitudes.
Okay, well, I'll help you out. He's not liberal. He's not conservative. He's mainstream. So that's what's going on. So it's good to see a Pope that's now taken a mainstream position. It's also good to see John has finally joined us from Canada so that we can increase the Communist News Network even further out than it is right now.
Yeah, what's your take, John? We were just talking about the fact that the Pope is affirmed that the union that should be the most approved is between a man and a woman. It sounds like he was not necessarily going with the notion of same sex and some of the other things. And he also talked about the dignity of the unborn, which is basically almost like, in my mind, him making an anti-abortion stance and all on those lines. And we do know, because like I said, I went to a Jesuit university. That's what Marquette is, that the conservative, the Jesuits, I think are considered more liberal, but the Catholic Church can be considered a conservative religious wing, like many religions can be. But I was just wondering your take, because apparently he only made this announcement earlier today.
Yeah, so I'm an atheist now. I was brought up as a Roman Catholic. So I like the new Pope because he's anti-Trump.
Gotcha. He does seem to be the opposite of Trump. That is very much true. He does seem to be like the opposite view of that, even though they may share some common views and everything. Toby, what's your take on what the Pope just said? You're on mute. There you go.
I was filling out emails and everything else, so I missed the conversation. What is the topic?
We're on the Pope right now. The Pope apparently came out and said that basically he's saying that the union or the family is based on a union between a man and a woman, and that the unborn have inherent dignity. So basically anti-abortion, and that the basic structure of the family should be between a man and a woman.
So the Pope said what churches normally say.
Yeah, basically.
I mean,
he just went with the common church view and all along those lines. True that.
I don't know why it surprises everybody. He's taking a mainstream position. His
No, he's not.
mainstream position, and I don't know when this became a right-wing position. His mainstream position is marriages between a man and a woman, which
Nick?
makes a lot of sense. His mainstream position is to uphold the dignity of the unborn children. Makes sense. So all he's doing is saying what 99.9% of the world agrees to.
No,
So I don't
Nick.
say anything.
Well, hold on. So when he says the dignity of the unborn child, we don't know what that means in specific terms, because the Catholic Church throughout history has had various positions on abortion, including that it's okay up until the quickening, that you can get rid of a fetus until you can feel the fetus move. The Catholic Church has been around for almost 2,000 years. And so, medical understanding and philosophies have been all over the place.
Well, that might be true, but if you look at the studies, here's what most biologists believe in. Whether you believe in it or not, it doesn't matter. 97% of the biologists say life begins at conception. And if you want to read the study, I would suggest you go to ssrn.com and type it in, and then you can read the study. Now that we know life begins at conception, whether you want to kill life, if killing life is
Right,
okay,
the world's biggest abortionist, the abortionist who kills 1/3 of all fetuses is God himself.
Yeah, the thing is, but see, what I don't understand about you liberals is that, oh gosh, all these people are going to die because USAID isn't sending them money anymore, even though they're not part of the United States. Oh, it's so horrible. Then you'll go out and you'll kill a bunch of unborn kids. Like, hey, no
Yeah,
problem.
a blastocyst that is 16 or
That's very
30
inconsistent.
cells, a fetus that is.
No, it's not very inconsistent. It's extremely inconsistent, and that's the problem you have with progressive movement. It doesn't make any sense to any person who has any basic logic skills.
A clump of 32 cells is not a baby, and most Americans would agree that at the point where you got 32 cells in a clump, no heart, no brain, just a bunch of cells that haven't differentiated yet, that is fair game for.
I'm not saying what most Americans say. I'm saying what most biologists say. Life begins at conception. Now, go read the studies, and that's what they believe. And if you believe differently, that's fine. You can be wrong. That's okay. Go ahead, Jadobi. You can speak up now.
Hi, Nick. I got a question for you. Since you're saying that that your whole your whole thing here, your whole discussion here, you're saying that the whole life begins at conception, so on and so forth. Do we celebrate birthdays or conception days?
Do you celebrate Christmas Day or New Year's Day? What difference does it make?
Okay, so it does make an actual difference.
Okay.
Then on top of that, here's a question for you. When is that child viable?
Oh, that's very interesting. This was the whole Roe decision, which I'm sure you've read, and actually was very well thought out. The Roe decision it dealt with viability, but viability doesn't necessarily mean life exists. That is a biologist study that says life exists.
Nick.
So they took the position, and they can take that position, that
Hold on.
we're going to allow abortion at viability, but it doesn't necessarily mean that is not limiting.
My friend Nick, you just gave a gaslighting answer.
Think about this when you're
No, hold on a second. Nick, I do have a question for you real quick.
I understand you don't mind killing people, but you have no problem with the U.S. not giving aid to these foreign countries.
I got a quick question for you. So if I'm hearing you correctly, I just want to make sure, because I'm going to come to one of Rick's favorite topics and everything like that. So if people are out there basically satisfying themselves and everything, is that murder?
Mark, that's not even the question I'm talking about. The question I'm talking about is viability. Now, if life begins at conception and viability begins when, Nick?
Okay, viability depends on the condition
So
of
then you
science.
cannot truthfully say that it's life if it's not viable, correct?
Listen to me carefully. Viability depends on the condition of science at the time. And the date has kept moving backwards.
So what you're
Science becomes more and more available to make the fetus alive outside the womb. So this is a changing demographic you're asking about.
so again, Nick, what I'm asking you again, two simple things.
Maybe
You're
immediately.
saying that life begins at conception. Does that mean that everyone conceived is born?
Well, hold on a second. Hold on. So,
Well,
life,
yeah.
all right. The thing, the sperm are alive. They're moving around. The egg is alive even before conception. That's not necessarily the criterion. Every time, I have murdered trillions of sperm by shooting them into a sock. Each sperm is alive. Does that mean that each of them should get a chance to turn into a full-on baby? No. Just because we know that a fertilized egg is alive doesn't mean that the debate automatically ends. That people
It's the reason for the question.
clumps of cells or a fetus this big has
Hey, Rick and everybody else, we've only got a few more minutes to go. Hey, Nick, we've only got a few more minutes to go. We can continue this debate on another day. But I did have one other social media story that I want to get to before we end everything, because I think that both of you will enjoy this, including Jatobi, because apparently we know TikTok, which is a lovely service, has been in all kinds of trouble, and they're going to launch a meditation feature in face of the lawsuits and criticism over the app's effect on children. So apparently TikTok is going to show teens a guided meditation after 10 p.m. I don't know that all the teens are going to be up at 10 p.m., but that's what they're going to do and everything. So they're expanding their mental health education, fun, and well-being feature. So one, are the teens actually going to use this feature? And how many teens are up at 10 p.m. that are going to be running to the TikTok guided feature about meditation? But this is something that they're doing because they were being sued because folks were concerned that they weren't doing enough for mental health.
Yeah, social media definitely causes depression, and honestly, that is actually a good thing that they would try to do this, because there are a lot of teens that are doom scrolling on TikTok at that time, more than you can think, more than you assume. I mean, so I have no issues with them attempting something different to push people into, hey, you can't, because they're going to use the service. The issue that you're going to run into is that teens are going to try and get around it by, hey, now I'm 21 and I'm really 13.
Yeah, that's going to
Social media causes depression. Real.
It does.
Show me a study that says that. Social
There are
media.
a ton of studies. We could probably show you 24.
Show me a valid peer-reviewed study that says social media.
Again, those studies exist.
What may happen is that too many people are spending too much time looking at their stupid cell phones. That may cause depression, or they're not spending enough time with other people. But please, don't tell me a social media site causes depression.
But I want to go back to abortion for a sec, because we haven't solved abortion in hundreds and thousands of years. We're about to move into another moral swamp when we start creating artificial consciousness and have to figure out what the rights of artificial beings are. And I would argue that your robot girlfriend created in 2032, who can think and feel, has more of a right to existence than a clump of 8 cells. And we're going to screw that up the same way we've screwed up, abortion policy by politicizing it and being unclear on stuff.
Well, even worse.
I totally disagree with you, Rick, on that one. If this girlfriend that's electronic gives me a ration, I'm going to pull the plug and I won't give a rat's rear. Go on.
All right. Well, there's a movie companion out that I keep recommending that has a robot girlfriend in it It's a great freaking movie, and it kind of dramatizes in a pretty fun way some of the issues that we're going to be facing in the 2030s and beyond. And yesterday, Mark, didn't you bring up the no, somebody else I was talking to brought up there's already a robot brothel in Berlin, Germany, where you can go bang a sex doll robot that's been programmed to your liking. And of course, you know, sex robots are not anywhere near conscious yet, but they will be in 10 years.
That's great. It will solve the human problem. So
we won't, because like a-holes will be beating the crap will pay money to beat the crap out of a robot girlfriend, to put cigarettes out on them. And then the argument will be, what about the rights of the robot? And the other argument will be, is this making people safer because the rapey guys are taking care of their impulses with robots? Or does it make the rapey guys even more rapey?
Something to look forward to. I'm glad we have something to look forward to. And you painted a beautiful picture of the future. Yeah, no problem. Speaking of future, do we have another show coming up here?
We've got Ukraine, Russia, China, and I might need you to go over there.
Yeah, we look at what's going on with Russia and Ukraine in just a minute. Sasha, I heard the peace talks only took 2 hours and they solved the whole problem. Is that true? 2 hours.
Russian representatives announced that Russia is ready to fight indefinitely. They are going to get 2 new regions of Ukraine very shortly. And therefore, there's really nothing to discuss. I mean, if you want to talk maybe about soccer or maybe a chess or something else, that's a different story. There are a lot of interesting topics. But to talk about peace with Russia, it's a waste of time. And let's do Donald. Let's him perform. He wants to perform. He's saying only when he will talk to Putin, there will be a peace. Let him. As soon as possible, the next 30 minutes, give call to Putin, tomorrow fly to Moscow, meet with the guy, talk to the guy, just enjoy yourself. Thank you. You, Trump, you are trying to absolutely change the international politics of the US developed in the last 80-some years, and you want to replace it with the Trump politics. Good luck if you can do it. Go ahead, please yourself.
And with that, we're going to have to run to Russia and Ukraine. We'll see you next week.
Happy weekend, everybody.